We will get started because we've got a full agenda for our webinar. So welcome to today's webinar. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. We're turning our peer spotlight today onto the University of North Carolina, Charlotte's graduate school. They've been using InfoReady for over a year and have some really interesting insights to share with us. But first, we're going to go over some logistics. Our webinar will be mostly a conversation between our host, Carlos Moncada, and our panelist, Julie Goodliffe. But we're going to save some time for you to ask questions and so we can answer them. Since the phones are muted, though, please use the Q&A function to submit your questions for Julie or for Carlos. You're going to automatically receive a copy of the recording after the webinar, which you're welcome to share with colleagues. And also, please plan to take just a minute or two to provide us with your feedback on the webinar once this all wraps up. But first, a word from our sponsor, which happens to be us, InfoReady. So InfoReady is a complete platform used by over 200 higher ed institutions to efficiently and effectively manage all the work that goes in around create, collect, review, track, decide, and report on the scores of decisions that administrators make throughout a semester. Graduate schools use InfoReady to select fellowship scholars, nominate for recognition awards, approve travel plans, run competitions for funding opportunities, and much more. But InfoReady is also used all across campus to efficiently run scores of other selection and approval processes. And this is just sort of a sampling of all of those things. So with continuous improvement and beloved customer support, our clients say that InfoReady makes their job much better. So now let's get to why you're here. Our webinar today will be a conversation, kind of an interview style between Carlos Moncada and Julie Goodliffe. Carlos is InfoReady's Director of Client Services. He leads the teams that support InfoReady clients, including implementation, training, technical support, and account management. Carlos has been with InfoReady since 2015 and knows all about InfoReady. And if you've joined us before, you'll recognize him as one of the regular hosts of our InfoReady webinars. Our special guest today is Dr. Julie Goodliffe. Julie is the Assistant Dean for Funding and Research in the Graduate School at the University of North Carolina. She helps graduate students pay for their education and their research. Her group provides over $15 million in tuition and stipend support, manages employment contracts for 3,000 graduate assistants on campus, and runs competitive internal fellowship programs for summer support. Julie serves as a reviewer for the National Science Foundation and uses that experience to train and support students as they apply for fellowships and grants. She began her career as a scientist, earning her PhD at Johns Hopkins, and first joining UNC Charlotte as assistant professor of biology. After successfully funding her research laboratory and graduating 5 graduate students from her program, Dr. Goodliffe earned an MBA from UNC Kenan-Flagler Business School and joined the graduate school as an administrator. From her experience with grant funding at all sides of graduate education, Julie understands the challenges students, faculty, and administrators face. Her time in the business school helps her see the world in new ways and work to align incentives and support students and faculty. So welcome, Julie. Thank you for joining us. And now I'm going to turn it over to Carlos.
Thank you, Rhonda. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today on this 11th of January. I have a deep husky voice today. I might try it out permanently. No, just kidding. I'm excited to speak to Julie today. She's been a pleasure to speak to prior to this, and I'm excited for her to share everything they're doing at UNC Charlotte in their grad school, especially around the management of fellowships. But it's not all that they use InfoReady for, and Julie's going to tell you a little bit more about that. Before I ask Julie the first question, I do want to just say congratulations to the University of Michigan national champions. Been on a high all week, and I just wanted to put that out to the world. Now, joking aside, Julie, could you tell us a little bit about the types of programs your office manages, just in general, not even within InfoReady, just more broadly what you're doing in your office?
Sure. I just want to say hi. Thanks everyone for coming and listening. So we are a state school, and it's a state school at least in North Carolina, two things are true. One is that somebody has to pay tuition. So for graduate students, we can't waive tuition. And so a way to be competitive with other graduate schools is we actually pay tuition for students. So that's the big source of money that we spend, is to pay tuition for all of our doc students and pay some tuition for a lot of master's students. So we manage a lot of that. We also have, for some reason, we have a bunch of money that we use to support students on stipends. And that's just sort of come to be over the years as new graduate programs came to exist. The provost office gives the grad school money to administer and fund students. So my team does that. I also manage the NSF Graduate Research Fellowship grant on our campus, so that, make sure that those fellows get their funding, and all the reporting and all that stuff. And then I also try to help other students do well with competitive applications. And part of that is a lot of this InfoReady. Well, it began before InfoReady. The summer fellowships that the graduate school offers are a way to provide professional development, so that students actually have to prepare a good application, and we evaluate them and they get scores. And that way they're kind of learning how to do this the best way while they're also competing for money. So that's what we do. Oh, and the second thing that's true, I started off a long paragraph saying, well, two things are true. And the second thing that's true is, at the end of the fiscal year, we have to spend all the money. So that's the state school thing. There's no rolling over to the future. And so at the end of each fiscal year, we often have money left over. And so that's where InfoReady comes in, and we spend a lot of money by the end of the fiscal year doing various things in InfoReady.
The grab bag of extra things.
Yes, it is. It really is a grab bag.
Funny. It's funny. So there's a lot of different programs and processes you're running. You mentioned you're the main funding mechanism to pay for grad students. So the value is very high, and what you're doing is very important to getting grad students in the door at UNC Charlotte.
Absolutely. They won't come. Doc students will not come if someone doesn't pay their tuition, and they shouldn't. No one should go to grad school for 5 years and pay for that. So absolutely, if we don't do that, we don't get any doctoral students.
So those decisions are really driving enrollment there. And I think you mentioned it's 15 million a year.
15 million with tuition, health insurance, and some stipend support. Maybe 4 million of that is stipend support.
And which one of these programs are you managing in InfoReady right now?
Well, actually, those programs run through Banner. So we're a Banner school, and our IT folks have built systems that can feed Banner. So we have our own homemade systems that spend most of that money. But the money for that we need to use InfoReady for are the creative things, where it's not just, set tuition, set stipend. It's the grab bag, right? Where, okay, so it's the end of the fiscal year is coming. We have $500,000 left to spend. What do we want to do? And so then we open up competitions for conference funding. So let's say if we can blast out, using InfoReady to say all students, hey, anybody presenting in a conference, upload your abstract and the invitation to present in this application, and we can provide some money. So we do conference travel. We also do the summer fellowship. So doctoral students have to submit an application, like a research fellowship application. And I recruit something like 40 faculty members every year to be reviewers for that. And so they're set up in InfoReady to review. And then I provide, it's competitive, so not everybody gets it, and the top scorers will get it. So we do that. Also, last year we had a lot of money left over last year, actually. So we did a bunch of these, and it was really, really fun. We got creative and decided, okay, assistant professors need help, right? They're working to get tenure, and maybe they need a student to help them this summer. And so I sent out a blast to assistant professors saying, hey, apply for a $5,000 summer fellowship for your student to work with you. And that was amazing. Within like 24 hours, they had spent $150,000. You know, they got their applications in, and the students were approved for funding. And that was really fun because they're really on the ball, those assistant professors, and they were very, very grateful for any help and support. So that was fun. And they also loved the system. So I actually had students and faculty both say, "This is so cool. This system works well." I mean, I'm telling you, nobody paid me to do this, so I'm just telling you the truth how much I love InfoReady. So, and the students and the faculty loved the system, the way it worked also. Rather than, emails back and forth, it was an official, nice to interact with system. So I did, one more thing that has helped us so much is, there are a lot of Fulbright students on campus, and I'm sure that's true at all campuses. And the Fulbright program is, I think, run through the Department of State, U.S. Department of State, right? And they often want a cost share with the university. So a student comes from overseas to your university, the Fulbright will pay for some of their stuff, stipend or tuition or something, and then they often ask the institution to provide a little support also. And we have no way of knowing who these students are. How much did we pay for them last year? Are they still here? What are we doing? And so we set up the Fulbright application in InfoReady, where a faculty member who admits a Fulbright student then fills out an InfoReady application for a cost share. And so we know who the student is, who's the faculty member, what program are they in, how much money do we owe them every year. So that was lost. That was lost in emails. And like you said, Carlos, somebody leaves the university and there went all of the information because it lived in their email inbox. So the Fulbright has also been very helpful. It's totally changed the way we cope with that too.
Well, that's great. Thanks for the rundown. You answered one of my questions ahead of time. I was going to say, what other tools are you using aside from InfoReady to manage these processes? So Banner, key component into that as well.
Yeah.
We can go so many different ways here because you gave so much information. One thing that people always want to know, because it can be a struggle, recruiting and managing reviewers for the processes. So you mentioned you recruit about 40 reviewers a year. Could you tell us a little bit more about how that goes? And
sure, I'd love to. That is so interesting. When I first started doing the summer fellowship, I kind of just asked my buddies, like people who know me, that, hey, I'm doing this thing. I think it would be great if faculty could review students' applications. And we get 40 or 50 applications, and I reviewed and other people reviewed. But over time, people found out about the summer fellowship program, right? So it's $8,000 for a student. And so the students found out about it and the applications grew and grew and grew. And I was spending all of like March reviewing these applications. But then I realized that it's a competition, right? The faculty know, students apply, and only, somebody decides who gets it. Well, wouldn't it be helpful for the faculty to be involved in that decision-making, right? So I often emailed like a program director in one program, mechanical engineering or something, and say, hey, we have 20 mechanical engineering applications, but we have 0 reviewers that are actually in the field of mechanical engineering. Can you find somebody to help us review? And they would, and they did, and so that came into play too. It also helps to be the person on campus that manages all that tuition money, because faculty want their students supported, and I
open your emails. They're like, oh, it's coming from her. I'll open that email.
Exactly. That's the way to say that. That's the way to say that. It's smart to open my emails. So yeah. But it's been really fun. And I've even, with the number of faculty I have after we have on campus with after several years of doing this fellowship thing, and I was reviewing all of the applications, I knew which programs had students that had really good applications and which ones had, not so good applications. And I started putting reviewers in the departments that had students with bad applications, in my opinion. I would send them the best applications. So the students who had great applications, I wanted them to go to the faculty in the departments where the students were not so good at their applications, so that the faculty could see, what's going on elsewhere on campus, we're an R2 school, like at Carnegie R2, but we were R3 a few years ago, and there's some R3 faculty, and there's some R1 faculty, because we're gonna be R1 soon-ish. And so I wanted faculty to see what our students are capable of in various places across campus. So I've used this fellowship for lots of purposes. Actually, it's
Oh,
fun.
you've been very clever and strategic in how you've gone about that. So,
Yeah, I mean, it's it's higher ed, right? It's all around faculty, students, everybody has, can learn from each other.
Agreed. So I'm glad that's really grown over time. You mentioned people just found out about this summer fellowship program. What kind of marketing do you do for your programs, including this, to get the word out that there's funding available? Or
Yeah. When I first started, I would just pull an enrollment report, figure out every single student on campus, filter out the ones I didn't want to communicate with. So this summer fellowship is for doctoral students and not masters. And I would just email every single one of them, like blast email to everybody. Hey, and the subject line always has to have dollar amounts in it, apply for, $8,000 summer fellowship. And students open that. And the ones that didn't open it would find out about it from their friends. So I found that if one person gets any kind of money, everyone they know knows about it pretty fast.
right? Yeah,
So
makes sense.
that happened. But then we also have the grad school sends out a weekly, it's called Grad Ed Weekly or something, and it's an email that goes to everybody. I don't know how many students open that, but I ask for a little splurb advertising the application deadlines and things.
Is the marketing communications team using something like MailChimp or Constant Contact or whatever?
It's one of those, yeah. I don't know what it is, but definitely something like that. Not like my direct emails, which seems primitive, just
Yeah, but nowadays you have to get really sophisticated with some of how you promote it. You can track it, and
yeah.
I've heard some institutions can drill down to see what the engagement is per department
With MailChimp or
with those types of
yeah.
email tools. Yeah.
Yeah, that is really cool. And we have that, I think, in Slate. We have a lot of stuff built into Slate to know exactly where people come from and what they look at and click and those things. But I understand why that's really, really important for almost everything. But when it comes to the funding stuff, I just put dollar amounts in the subject line, and I get plenty of customers,
Yeah. What's that? The old axiom, money talks.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Yeah, I don't need Salesforce or anything. I just put, $8,000 in the subject line.
That's great. So you've given us some great background information. And there are threads of life before InfoReady in there as well. So can you tell us a little bit more about life before InfoReady versus after InfoReady, what the transition was like?
Well, okay, so before InfoReady, the very first time I did this fellowship thing, it was just basically that email. And then students would reply to the email and send me an attachment. And so, application via email. And that is always bad, because emails get lost. it's just a bad idea. And then I switched to a Google form, and this was, one Google form where, okay, attach your application, and then that you get the Google Sheet with everybody's name. And I'd use the Google Sheet to assign reviewers. And then I take that Google Sheet and I guess I would divide it up. I think I divided it up into a bunch of different sheets, one sheet per faculty reviewer. Oh my gosh, a gazillion Google Sheets. And then I decided, okay, I'm going to just do one giant Google Sheet. The following year is another one. And I protected the ranges. I figured out how to, lock down and protect ranges. Faculty still did mess it up. I have to go to version history and fix where Dr. So-and-so, deleted 4 different things. So it was tenuous, and it was labor intensive, and a ton of emails and Google Sheet. So then I talked about this summer fellowship program at a meeting. It was NAGAP, and Brooke, right, from InfoReady, talked to me and said, hey, that there's a system that can manage all of this for you. And I said, really? Yay. And she did a demo, and we said, okay, we can pay for this, and it's worth it. And so now, oh my gosh, now I just launch it, and then I send out information to the faculty and to students about, okay, this is available now. And then InfoReady just does all that work, for me that I used to do, try to organize the Google Sheets and try to, set up reviewers and yeah, it's the before and after, it's such a huge difference. And I remember the last time I did all of this by Google Sheet was during the pandemic, and we had just, everybody was sent home in March, everybody go home. And so we were dealing with everybody go home. I had like a kindergartner on online kindergarten and this whole thing. And I was reading all these applications and dealing with all these Google Sheets, and it was just insane. And the following year we had InfoReady, and my life was like completely different. I'm like, it was March, and I'm looking around like, wow, I don't have all that stuff to do, because InfoReady was handling it.
I'm glad that was helpful. That well, a lot of the manual stuff that you described, the system automatically does for you. And you do have to set up the form the way you want, the workflow, but then the outputs really take away a lot of that tedious work.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I love the automated emailing where, remind reviewers you have reviews due. Also, with the progress report, I asked for a progress report and it had a deadline, so it was reminding all the students that they had to submit their progress report, and they actually did it, and it didn't come in an email to me. It's up in the system. I was reading them just earlier. Like, oh, there they are. I can actually read them and probably keep reading them far into the future. So absolutely, the automation is huge. Also the automation makes it official too, where if something doesn't go somebody's way, like a student doesn't get the fellowship and they get the email from InfoReady instead of from me personally, it's easier, right? It's like it's less of a personal, rejection.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Do people ever push back on not getting it?
It has happened once or twice.
Okay.
So I set up, that's part of the reason why I set up, the reviewers, I require them to make comments, and InfoReady is awesome. You put that little star and it's required, right? And so they have to have comments. And I released all that stuff to the students because they complain. They think we're just making this up, arbitrarily picking one person or another. When actually a faculty member read it and has a bunch of problems with it. And so it's really cool to let the students see their reviews.
Yeah, and they get constructive feedback.
Yep, they get constructive, they can improve, and then also not wonder why they didn't get the fellowship. It's nice to be transparent that way.
Although the reviewer names are anonymous, so that, they can't go to office hours and yell at faculty.
Yeah, that is very important, actually.
Yeah. So you provide this funding, make these decisions. How do you measure the ROI? What kind of metrics are you looking to gather, and how do you collect the information?
Well, so for the graduate school summer fellowship, the $8,000 thing, I asked our institutional research people for time to degree data for all doc students that graduated in the past number of years that we've been doing this. And so I analyzed that data. I know who applied, obviously, and who got it and who didn't, who had other types of summer fellowships or assistantships. And so I compared time to degree and found on average, the summer fellowship sped up time to degree by 9.6 months. And that sounds awfully precise, but I did do like the stats on it. It's true. And for some programs, students in some programs, it chopped a year off of time to degree.
That is amazing. Think like how many people who went to grad school would love to cut out an academic year?
Yeah, yeah. And and that was our hope too, that yes, we're doing this professional development, we're helping students survive in the summer without having to teach. But maybe, the best case scenario is they take the time that they have in the summer and they actually get a lot of work done that they can't get done during the academic year, and maybe it helps them in their education. And it turns out to be true. Now certain programs, it doesn't really help their time to degree, but they're already at 4.5 years time to degree, so they're already pretty awesome. But some programs with an 8-year time to degree, drop it down to 7, that's awesome, right?
People are fatigued by then. They want to wrap this up.
8 years, it's too long.
Yeah, but that's having those numbers, you can promote that in your recruitment.
Yeah, yep, we try. We're not so good at that yet, although we have a person who I think is gonna start doing that. But yes, we can promote that in recruitment, say, hey, there's a summer fellowship opportunity at UNC Charlotte. And we also, the dean told our provost about it, and the provost said, oh my gosh, that's cool. And now she's giving us the extra money to do even more of this every year. So we always spend whatever we have left in the grad school, but now academic affairs is dumping more money into that bucket so that we can do it for more students. Because of the the effect it has on students' education.
So then there's more volume to run already.
Yes. Oh, it wouldn't, yeah, the volume, it has doubled every year for the past 3 years or so.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's pretty significant.
Mhm.
How, you might not know this off the top of your head. How many total applications across all programs that you manage in InfoReady are there?
Okay, let's see. I actually have the window open right here. Number of applications for last year. Let's see, 86 for the conference travel, 103 for the summer fellowship, 63 for the assistant professor thing. And then, yeah, so it's 250, I think, total.
And you're expecting that to double again?
Oh, I hope not. I think, I don't know. I mean, sure.
Am I scaring you? You're like, oh, I hope.
Well, because then I need more and more reviewers, and yeah. But yeah, I mean, it's great for the students, and but I do think we're probably at, we've found all the eligible students. We've got about 6,000 grad students on campus. Most of them are master's students. A lot of our doc students are in education, so they're part-time, they're like principals or teachers. So I think, we've probably hit the ceiling. We'll hit the ceiling with 200 for sure.
Got it. Okay. So you're like, whew.
Yeah. Exactly.
So, but there's always that bucket of money for the grab back. at the end of the year.
Mm-hmm.
And you and I were talking before, and you were saying, well, we're just starting, it just was playing around with Form Designer template to use it for some of these new programs. So you seemed excited about Form Designer. Could you tell me a little bit more about what you're planning on using Form Designer for?
Yeah, we started off without Form Designer, and then we added Form Designer after I had built everything that we already have. So today, actually, I was just setting up a new thing, and I got to use the Form Designer for the first time. So I love the flexibility and the functionality, and all the things you can edit in the Form Designer that I couldn't do before, I guess. And what I'm going to use it for is, you know, the 4.5 million in stipend that the grad school provides, mostly goes to teaching assistants, so TA stipends. And we know what they're doing. We've got, you know, 24,000 undergrads on campus, and those TAs are teaching. But the research assistants that are funded by the grad school, we don't know what they're doing. And we think, like any funding agency, we should probably know something about what they're doing, since we're funding it. And like the grad school summer fellowship, I know what those students do because they have to apply for that money and then provide a progress report. These students on the RA stipends, they don't have to do any of that. So I started setting that up today. You know, the dean wants to have students basically have a compact with their advisor saying, okay, here's the project, here are the working hours, you know, expected, here are expectations on communication, expectations on authorship, and, you know, agree on, you know, are we doing this on campus? Are we doing this remote? Are we doing a hybrid? Or how often are we going to meet face to face? How often are we going to meet as a group? And so on. So there's a big long list of items that we want to find out how the mentor and the mentee relationship is set up, essentially. And then we'll have the research project description. And then I'll set up a progress report so that students have to give us an update about what they accomplished in that academic year. So this is to basically formalize, you know, the best practices, right? Where a research assistantship isn't, you know, it's supposed to be contributing to the student's education. And so we want to know that. We want to know that the funding the grad school provides is benefiting those students, and that they're having as good of an experience as they can. Now, you know, we can't ensure that everybody tells the truth, right? Like, you know, yes, we're going to meet one-on-one every week, and maybe that won't happen. But at least it's a way of having a student meet with the faculty member and have them come to an agreement on all that stuff so they can fill out the form and submit it. And it's an official sort of, here's what we're supposed to do kind of thing that maybe will help them actually do it.
You know, setting expectations and sometimes really does go a long way.
Yeah.
To accomplishing things.
Absolutely. And in academia, it's difficult to do that, you know, because especially doctoral students, you know, once you're done with all your course requirements and you're just on the dissertation research stuff, that person could get lost in the woods so easily. And faculty are not trained in how to actually work with people. So it's, you know, it's not like, unless maybe it's the College of Business, you know, with the management or, you know, faculty or experts in that. The rest of them aren't so good at that. So this I think helps people with best practices. I hope we'll start it soon.
No, great. That's great. Quick note for everyone on listening in InfoReady, a progress report is a form you can assign to the applicant after they've been selected or awarded. So you can have multiple progress reports that you assign to an individual over time, and the system will automatically send reminders out for that. And so I'm not sure if Julie's doing this in the manner I'm about to describe, but hypothetically, you could have a year 1, a year 2, and a 3-year progress report. And so you could assign those today and scheduled the reminders for years in advance.
Ooh, years in advance, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I'm glad to share that with you.
Well, and that makes sense too, because if a school uses it for, a competitive institution application to a, external funding that's a 5-year project, then you do need the multi-year option. That's
Yeah,
cool.
yeah. So you can do that, or you can have different forms with different types of questions and in the progress report. We have some questions in the Q&A.
Cool.
So I'm going to stop my list of questions for a second, and we'll address some of these. We have one attendee from Bowie State University asks, how can students apply to the fellowship? What are the processes, and when is the application opened?
So I create the application in InfoReady, and there's a URL that's associated with it. And I think I open it up in maybe March. No, the applications are due in March for the summer. And so we let everybody know in April whether they get the fellowship or not. I think I opened it up in January or February. So they have a couple months with InfoReady. And we have at UNC Charlotte, the single sign-on thing is our login. I'm talking technical stuff that I'm sure I'm not saying correctly, but InfoReady uses the same single sign-on login. So we've merged, I don't know how it works, but students can use their UNC Charlotte login to log into InfoReady, which is cool. So they get the link, they can click on it and log in with their UNC Charlotte credentials, and then they see this beautiful application, and it brings them through all of the stuff that I need to gather. And then once they submit, they get a nice email, says, thank you for submitting. They get lots of automated emails. Okay, but that's not your question. So I think I answered the question. I'll stop talking about that.
Thanks. I think you could probably elaborate a little more on the process, though. So they submit the application. It's open. They submit the application. Do they have some sort of like pre-approval signature they need from any?
Yes. So the summer fellowship, I have them set up their own, the first step in the approval. So I have it go through several steps of approval. The first step is the student enters their own dissertation advisor's email. And so in the system, into InfoReady, and that makes that person the step 1 reviewer, because I want those faculty to know their student is applying for money from the grad school, because they might have plans to try to fund their student in the summer, and they need to know. They also need to know, in case they're going to spend the summer in Switzerland or something. And so we've heard from faculty over the years that they really want to know when their student's getting this money. So that's step 1. It goes to the faculty member. Within InfoReady sends that person an email saying, hey, you have a review, and there are directions about how to do that in that email. So that faculty member, they have successfully, it's like 200 faculty I have loaded into InfoReady and have successfully logged in with their UNC Charlotte credentials and done stuff. So the first step is to approve. So that faculty member approves, and then it comes to the grad school. So me and my boss last year, we read them all. And since there were so many, and I had 40 reviewers, but some faculty are awesome. They'll say, hey, I'll review 40 of these applications. Some say, I can do 2. And we like to have 3 reviewers for all applications. So my boss and I read all of them first. So that was the second routing step. And we actually we took the best ones, like the ones that are just totally awesome, and automatically funded them. And the ones that maybe half of them, we sent off to review, because we wanted faculty input on those. So we didn't have faculty review every single one, simply because we didn't have enough faculty for that. So that was step 2, was my boss and I. And then step 3 was the other faculty reviewers. So I could assign one application to 3 different faculty in InfoReady. So I'd go into InfoReady and pick the people and each faculty member is set up with a program that I associated them with a graduate program, so I could know, okay, here's a student in, electrical engineering, here's a faculty member in electrical engineering, and send the applications to the appropriate faculty from within InfoReady. So the step 3 was to those faculty, and that's where they gave scores and provided input. And once that was done, I think it was up to me to just sort of pull reports, and so that was a cool thing, reporting on the back end, download the report with all the reviewer scores and comments and everything, and I could, sort and filter and then email. Well, I didn't have to email anybody. I didn't have to email anybody. InfoReady took care of all of that. Is that the whole process?
I think that covered quite a bit.
Okay.
Right. The general concepts of InfoReady, but you have this centralized location, and you as the administrator, you set up the opportunity in there with the details of it and the application form. Student applies, and in your case, you turn on applicant-driven routing steps. So we student enter the information of their advisor, right? So you don't have to go look for it.
Exactly. That was awesome.
All right, so that's that's a part of the workflow, and we call them routing steps in the system. So that automatically goes there, and the rest of the workflow, the routing steps you set up. So you had a step for yourself and your boss. And then you had another step after that for the committee, I think you said.
Yep.
Right. So you're assigning the review. You assign yourself as a reviewer, and then you're able to assign the other reviewers that were part of the committee as needed to the applications. Three reviewers per application, ideally.
Yep.
And you can assign those in batches, right?
Yep.
And they get notifications telling them which applications they're assigned to review. They follow the link, they go into the system, they fill out the review, they answer the review criteria, the questions there in the review form. And then you're able to view all of that in the system, as you just described. And you can even export it. So you can view it in the system or export it. And then you make the award decisions and communicate that out. And as we talked about before, it's very helpful when you can share the anonymous reviewer feedback in that decision email.
Yep, it's great. And I can also have a little acknowledgement statement where I can, the first reviewer step, the acknowledgement statement was, yes, I am in fact the dissertation advisor for the student, so that the person didn't route it to their best friend, right? So there's that acknowledgement statement. And then after the review committee themselves got their review, so they would go in and complete their review, they also had an acknowledgement saying, I, as far as I know, I don't have any conflict of interest, in reviewing this student's application. So that kind of puts a formality on those things and makes it feel better, like we rely on the honor system a lot, and this just makes it a lot more, I feel better that yes, honor system works, especially when people have to click the box that says they are the dissertation advisor or that they have no conflict of interest.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to do that to some extent, right? We're relying on people's words all the time in our lives. So
yeah, and I learned over time that I needed to do that only because this fellowship, there were students who I've given the fellowship to, and it turns out their advisor, I don't know, something was not right. Like they're supposed to have passed their proposal defense and qualifying exam. And I asked them, have you passed your proposal defense and qualifying exam? And they say yes. And it turns out, no, they hadn't actually. And some faculty have told me about things that, students have said that maybe weren't true. And they were doing that in the Google form or an email with me. But I have a better feeling about it in InfoReady. I feel like it's, when you have that real official thing where you absolutely have to click this box saying, I acknowledge blah, blah, blah before submitting, I think it makes it easier for me to feel good about what they're saying.
I'm with you. right, because that is memorializing what they're submitting, right? It's in a system. You can refer to it.
Yeah,
You're putting in the terms and conditions with
yeah,
it's describing that this is, the honor code applies here and all of that.
yep, yep.
Yep. So we have several questions about your process. And I might be able to answer some of these as
Mhm.
well. Here we go. If approval of something needs to occur, can multiple people be reviewing and approving at one time, or does something have to route person by person? So it can be both.
Mhm. Yep, yep, I've done it both. I've done it both ways where, actually that 3-step summer fellowship, the first step had to happen first. So the dissertation chair had to sign off first. And then the next 2 steps happen. Yeah, did I do that? Maybe that was a different thing. The next 2 steps could happen concurrently where, I guess I couldn't do that with the fellowship, but I think I did it with a different thing. Where 2 steps happen at the same time and one doesn't have to precede the other. So I've done it both ways.
All right. Yeah. So you can do both the concurrent or sequential steps in the process, and you can assign multiple reviewers within a given step so that they all, if they're providing comments and ratings on something, you can have 3, 5, 10 people in there in
Mhm.
that step all at once. So here's another question for you. And you mentioned it before, so this is kind of just a refresher. What was the largest number of applications for a particular program? I think you said like 104 or 106 for the travel.
Um, Travel.
And notice she's getting this information in real time as we're talking, by the way.
Yeah, I've got my little managed competitions page open. The biggest was 103 applications to the grad school summer fellowship.
103. Okay, that's great. I have seen some institutions for different types of programs, not described here, go over 1,000.
I
Right.
can imagine, yeah.
Right. Some of those were COVID forms.
Oh,
So going over a lot of forms to manage in this applications to manage in the system, but people have successfully managed opportunities or forms
mhm.
that have over 1,000.
That's awesome. I can imagine that because, we have 6,000 grad students. That's, I don't know, medium sized, right? There are places with 10,000, 15,000 graduate students. So,
Right.
and there could be undergrad stuff. If we had anything with undergrad, any application for undergrads, we could get to the thousands for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. In the given cycle, right?
Mhm. Yeah, yes. Yeah, I think I would need some help to manage that much.
Probably. Yeah. More reviewers for one.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Um, let's see. Here's another question for you. Do you use InfoReady to evaluate student teaching?
Ooh, that's a great idea. We don't, but that's a great idea. We have a Center for Teaching and Learning, I think, that manages that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I've never seen it. I think we're supposed to know as a graduate school. I think the UNC system asks us to evaluate teaching and research assistantships. And the grad school doesn't see them at all. So that is a way we could do that with InfoReady. And I think once this RA thing that I built today, the research assistantship thing goes out, we could expand that and modify it for TAs, but just to see, maybe not, from the undergrad students, how is the TA teaching, what teaching evaluation, how is that? But to know how the relationship between the TA and their maybe whatever faculty instructor of record there was, and how was that actual experience in the teaching assistantship for the grad student?
Yeah. Sounds like a summer project.
Yeah, another one.
Excuse me. Okay, so just got a few minutes left. Could you elaborate on the travel grants?
Sure. Every year students ask me for money to travel at a conference, and they're so excited. I've been invited to give a talk in this place in Seattle and something, and they don't have the money to go. So last year, I opened it up in InfoReady and just sent out an email to everybody, and actually maybe just put it into, I told graduate program directors, and it went out in the grad ed weekly email blast saying, hey, apply for conference travel from the graduate school. And so students applied and uploaded their abstracts and the thing said that you've been invited to give this talk. And then we could click, award. This is a great part. You click award in InfoReady and it sends people an email, and they say, the email says, congratulations, you've been awarded this much money. So that's how we did the conference travel. And the students were so excited about that. And they didn't even know it was me, like they'd reply, they'd send me an email saying, hey, I've gotten this conference travel. And, I was the one that just clicked the button and sent the email. So it was actually awesome because, we know exactly who got the money, right? And we know why. We have their abstract. If for another summer project, I could compile all that stuff and say, here's all the awesome stuff our students are doing. And there could be a little story about that. We wouldn't have this information otherwise, right? So I think the conference travel thing is something we'll do again.
Oh, that's pretty cool. Yeah. Those are stories to tell more broadly.
Yeah.
Cool things that your grad students do. Yeah, I like that. We've got another question here. The person says, in the routing steps, can you assign a number of days between steps instead of deadlines? For example, I'd like to process to take 4 weeks or less with a prompt each week for a different reviewer, but I want the clock to start when the application is submitted. There is a feature in the system that is based off of number of days.
Ooh.
That's for a feature called department-driven routing steps that helps automate routing as well. But that's pretty cool because it's like it's just based on whenever you assign it, then it says you have this many days from the assignment date. Yes, you can. But in general, I would say with the deadlines assigned, that also helps speed up the process. Last year or maybe 2 years ago, we did a webinar with AVP for research over at Oklahoma State. And she was describing undergraduate research program, very high profile. They call it the NIBLAC Scholars Program. She said they cut their process down by 3 to 4 weeks using InfoReady.
Oh my gosh.
And the review process, the collection of reference letters and the review process was really condensed because of everything. It was very well received to be able to shave all that time off the cycle.
Oh, that is wonderful. I'm sure, they were so happy the first year they realized that that happened. Like, oh my God, I'm not doing that thing that I would be doing this time of year.
Right. It really is impactful on your day-to-day work, I would say.
Yes.
Right, you can work more actively with on bigger plans, right? Like on strategic planning or outreach to the departments, I'm sure, or working with students. Right, those higher value activities, I would say, rather than let's get into a spreadsheet or
Yes.
send emails.
Exactly, it's true. And because InfoReady has there's so many possibilities that we know that will save us time, we can get more creative, we like this RA thing that I built today. If we didn't have InfoReady, we'd have a Google form for it. And yeah, it's not the same. This is completely different because I built it in InfoReady. If it were a Google form, it would be much more limited and too much hands-on. And so we never did it, right? We've never done it before. We're only doing it now because we have InfoReady that can make it easy to do it.
Yeah, no, that's great endorsement there. Well, because a lot of people don't always think about the downstream work that's needed, right? You look at the form, but what about everything that comes after the form where you collect the application or whatever it might be? So,
Yeah, exactly.
okay, we're near the end of time here. So two things for me, and then I'm gonna turn it over to Rhonda. One, Julie, would you be willing to share templates with other administrators that are on the call?
Absolutely.
Great. So if anyone on the line is interested in chatting with Julie about obtaining some of the templates she's used, reach out to us and we'll gladly make the connection. Second thing, what's one last takeaway for people?
Let's see.
We already did this, but one last takeaway, like 2 sentences.
2 sentences. 2 sentences takeaway for InfoReady. The bottom line for what my group does with all this money is to support students. And I think InfoReady has really upped our game in that. We can support them in more ways, in better ways. And they can use that. They use that to actually improve not only their education and research, but their professional development. So that's the coolest thing to me about InfoReady is that we've funded and helped more students this past year than ever because we could creatively utilize InfoReady to do different things.
Great. Thanks so much. That I love that you're able to do that. That's awesome.
Oh, me too. Thanks. Thank you.
Julie, it was great talking to you. I'm going to turn it back over to Rhonda now.
Okay. It's great talking to you, Carlos.
Thanks.
Yes, thank you so much, Julie. Thanks for joining us for the webinar. And you'll see a survey that pops up at the end. And as Carlos mentioned, if you would like to connect with Julie or want to get an example or her one for templates to use, you can put that. There's a spot where you can add some information or put your name, just put a note in the survey. So of course, here's some information if you'd like to learn more about InfoReady or have questions about your own version of InfoReady, all the capabilities that it has. Feel free to reach out to us. You can reach out to Max Steinerman if you don't have InfoReady yet, or if you have questions about things, feel free to reach out to Carlos as well. So thank you again, Julie. This was a fabulous webinar. Thank you, Carlos. We're so glad that your voice held up. And we look forward to talking with you again. So thank you for joining us and have a great day.
Thank you all.